Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast on the Genre Equality channel. I'm Hitzer.
I'm Hardi.
Hey, what a big surprise!
Hey,
This
twist.
is not Hard Hits, by the way. This is the Genre Equality channel. Hardy makes his in-ring debut
Yeah.
um, in our spin-off show. Behold, to my knowledge, you've never been on our spin-off episode,
No.
or not yet, right?
Not
So
yet.
this is your first one.
Yeah.
That's quite exciting. And I thought Hardy's debut episode on Behold would be perfect for the first time we ever covered sports TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
So on the 47th episode right here, we'll be discussing some of our favorite fictional live action TV shows about sports. With clear eyes and full hearts, we'll be delving into Friday Night Lights, Ted Lasso, Brockmire, and then Sports Night. But before we get into those four topics,
Mhm.
right? I just want to clarify that again, we're talking about live action sports shows.
Yeah.
Meaning fictional shows, so no actual sports here.
Yeah.
And secondly, no anime. Although I know some of you may be disappointed in that, but we cover a lot of sports anime already on Genre
Yeah.
Equality, so we figured we'll go a different route. And Behold is
And also no
sort of-
documentaries, obviously.
yeah, fictional live action TV shows. So if you're looking for us to talk about Haikyuu or Slam Dunk or whatever, it's not here. I'm sorry, and we won't be reviewing the NBA or what happened on the NFL or the Super Bowl or anything ever. These are fictional live action TV shows.
That'll be my future podcast.
Sure, why not? Tune into Hardy's future sports podcast, co-hosted by Pat McAfee or something.
Wow. $120 million man, you sure?
Sure, that's a spare change for you, right? Anyways, before we delve into our four main topics here, are there any honorable mentions from the world of fictional live action sports shows that you wanna give a shout out to? Like stuff that we're not covering, but is near and dear to your heart.
I mean, if we are talking about fictional live action, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say certain things like what's that show called?
Don't you
OJ.
really like?
The
Sure.
OJ Simpson story,
Mm-hmm.
the one
mm-hmm.
with Cuba Gooding Jr.
Right. So we're not talking about the documentary OJ Made in America.
Nah, yeah, I'm talking about the Netflix show, I think.
Yes. Although, I mean, if you do want to watch either the Netflix show or the documentary, both are real
Real good.
well worth your time.
And somehow
really, really
came
good.
out around the same time as each other.
Correct. As well as another really great Ryan Murphy show that I wanted to shout out, OJ, American Crime Story, season 1, which is about OJ Simpson as well and his trial, of course. But I mean, that doesn't quite pertain to sports, but it's about a sports figure, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Netflix has this other semi-reality. I mean, what do you call shows based on? A show which is based on reality, I guess.
Okay.
Called The English Game, which is about
What
the
is it
origins
about?
of football.
The origins of football. Okay.
Which is not too bad, but again, not really one of the greats, I think.
Sure.
Period
Some
drama,
of
it's a period drama.
It's a period drama about the origins of the world's most popular sport,
Yes,
football.
correct.
Soccer for you Americans out there. I want to shout out a little bit Eastbound and Down on HBO.
That's a good one as well.
Which I find really, really funny. I mean, I really like that. I don't know if you consider horse racing a sport, but David Milch, the creator of Deadwood, has a show called Luck about horse racing that I would also recommend you check out. Currently, out right now on HBO Max is a show called Winning Time: The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. It's by Adam McKay, who most recently did Don't Look Up and all. It's about the rise of the Lakers franchise.
Oh, there we go.
It's not particularly great, but it is a very fun look at a time that we didn't live through. It's nostalgic in a way, even though I never lived through that era. But I mean, obviously the Lakers franchise is the showiest, the most show businessy franchise in the NBA, and it delves into all of that.
Can I say one more thing though?
Sure, Blue Mountain State, right?
No, actually, but I think we kind of forgot about heels.
Heels, yes, about the world of professional
Yeah.
wrestling. If you want to go down that route, also, fake sports, I would also recommend Glow.
Glow. So yes, that's not bad.
Yeah, if you want to catch reviews of Heels and or Glow seasons 1, 2, 3, go over to our Hard Hits channel on Mixcloud
Oh
/Hard
yeah.
Hits, or go to Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Just search for Hard Hits Glow or Hard Hits Heels, and you can find our reviews of those shows there, lah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is primarily why I didn't, put this
Yeah,
on
yeah,
this
yeah.
list
I
because
understand.
we've already reviewed those shows.
Yeah.
I'm actually very surprised you didn't mention one show,
Oh, which one?
Ballers on HBO.
I was going to, but then because like it is not.
It's not good,
It,
right?
yeah, it's not one of those shows that you remember.
Sure, sure. But I mean, you're such a big
I'm a huge Rock
The Rock
fan.
mark.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep, yep,
'Cause I
yep.
watch everything that The Rock is in. Uh,
Absolutely. Do you still keep up with Ballers though?
um, is Ballers is still around, man?
Actually, I don't know. Has it been cancelled?
I think it's done already.
Oh well, sad for The Rock, I guess.
No, like, he goes. Oh my god! The last thing you need to do is be sad for Rock that a show is cancelled.
I know, I know. He's probably gearing up for a 2024 presidential run or something like that.
Yeah. Uh,
Anyways, let's begin with our number one topic,
sure.
which I think it's safe to say greatest sports drama of all time, Friday Night Lights. Would you agree with
Yes,
that
I mean
sentiment?
it is. It is at that level because of how young we were when we were watching
Yeah,
it.
formative age,
Formative
correct.
age, yeah. So
Yeah.
it really hit home because the most of the cast were around our age lah. Or playing
Mm.
people our age.
Yeah, they may have been like 2 or 3 or
Yeah,
four
yeah,
years
yeah.
older, but I mean that was our demographic at the time.
Correct. And
Mhm.
there was just something about that drama that I mean, okay, for me, it was unique for me because I'm already an American football fan, so this kind of
Mhm.
like it kind of just I was very familiar with the game and all that, so it wasn't so hard for me to like catch the terms and all that. But then for people who never watch American football, it didn't matter because the drama was so good.
Yes, yeah. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I wanted to touch on because this show developed by Peter Berg was actually inspired by a 1990 non-fiction book by
Hmm.
H.G. Bissinger, which was
Also made into a
realized.
movie, lah.
Correct, which was also made into a 2004 film of the same name. Before we delve into the TV show, let's touch a bit upon the film. Have you seen the film?
Yes, I have.
Do you think how does the show rank up with the film? The film is obviously quite good, but I think the show is a better representation of the material. What about you? Do you
Uh,
think the show is better than the movie?
okay, I think the movie can stand on its own. The only thing that I feel that the TV show does a lot better is flesh out characters, lah. There's so much
Mm,
more time to flesh out relationships, to flesh out all these different uh, entanglements
dynamics,
between the characters, the dynamics and all that. So yeah, that's
hmm
the good thing about the TV show, I feel, compared to the movie. Even though
Yes,
the movie's solid also, with really
the
great
movie is
acting.
really great. One of the best, I think, football movies out there
Mm,
as well.
I agree.
Peter Berg is really great, but I think the show does do it better. Unlike you, I'm not an American football fan.
Exactly.
Yes, I've played Madden on console games and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, but I wouldn't say I'm super familiar with football terms or football rules or football dynamics. Nor am I invested in any football teams.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit weird for me to get into a show like Friday Night Lights because I never ever thought I would be into it. A sport that is kind of like infamous, right, for meat hits,
Concussions and all that.
the concussions
I
and
mean, the
brute
first
force.
episode of Friday Night Lights was a guy getting a spinal injury.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, who could have imagined that such a brutal sport could be the cornerstone of one of television's most delicate and affecting dramas?
Mm-hmm.
It is heartrending and infuriating at times,
It
and
is.
rife with shattering setbacks and grand triumphs. Friday Night Lights is all of these, and in those ways, it resembles the game around which the tiny town of Dillon, Texas revolves.
Mm-hmm.
Tender and nuanced aren't usually words that are applicable to the gridiron, but they fit the bill here.
Mm.
It is very heartfelt, but not saccharine. It is shot beautifully, but also hyper realistically in a very shaky docudrama or documentary style, and features a talented cast, among which the teenagers and parents are blessedly clearly defined, and the show manages to convince people episode after episode that yes, football really is life, especially in the world of Dillon, Texas. what got me into the show wasn't the sports aspect; it was the teen drama aspect, which is what's interesting about Friday Night Lights. Because I would say it's not just the best sports show of all time; it is one of the best teen dramas of all time. Do you go down that route as well?
I mean, okay, compare it to the teen dramas around that time, like the OC and One Tree Hill. I think those were
Oh,
around during that period of time.
yeah, heads over heels, way better, right?
Agreed. Yes.
Mm.
I mean, the from everything from the script, to the acting, to just the overall arcing storylines was so much more intriguing and so much more personable. Like you really
Mm.
felt the pain of some of the players. You really felt the pain of some of the um what they are going through. Lah. Setbacks is like one of the things that is constantly happening to this team. Like this the players in this team. Like
Yeah,
there's so many setbacks throughout all the seasons. Even after you graduate, also still got setbacks.
yeah, they're the perennial underdogs,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And is
Yeah,
and how they um push through that is so great, lah.
yeah.
Coach Taylor, I feel, anchors the show really well.
Mm.
As an out of town, not a Texan himself, if I remember correctly. I think he was
Yeah.
Californian or something.
Yeah, he was from out of town, as I
Yeah.
remember.
So
Yeah.
this out of town guy coming to Texas and coaching a high school team. And one thing that the show make you realize is how important to small towns in Texas high school football is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like this culture. It's like a culture that,
Religion.
yeah, exactly. It's number one
Yeah.
God, number two football, number three um the Cowboys,
Guns, I guess.
guns, I was going, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, you learn about this kind of um, slice of American culture, which is, uh, I mean, embedded in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Lah. I do okay. I'm not middle of nowhere, Texas, lah, but somewhere in Texas. Lah. Is it-
It is a rather rural, remote town in Texas. It's a small town, and I like that you pointed that out because yeah, it's a bit anthropological as well because it's
Mm,
such a foreign concept to especially
for
foreign
us,
viewers such as
yeah,
us. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. I mean, it's so far from the glitz and glamour of the NFL. This is like, and yet the town worships this team to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, like, it's the number one entertainment there, and also a way of galvanizing a town's loyalty, a town's spirit, in a team that
Yes.
is winning, lah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, it
All
goes a bit
losing,
crazy when the I mean, in later seasons,
of
the
course.
rise of East, the West school, right?
West and East Dillon.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 I think one of the things people remember most about the show is obviously its catchphrase, right?
yeah.
To eyes full hearts can't lose. It's something even Barack Obama quotes in his speeches,
Mm-hmm,
things like
mm-hmm.
that. And since the pilot has become really, really memorable, and there are many reasons to recommend FNL, but having a great catchphrase that kind of never outstays its welcome is
Yeah,
pretty
it
remarkable.
doesn't.
I mean, how many other TV shows have managed that? And what marks the catchphrase as truly fantastic is that Clear Eyes Full Hearts Can't Lose reflects so many other elements that make this show worth recommending, more than just the
Mm,
football. For instance, consider the series' tone, right, which is kind of unique in TV, especially at that time.
yeah,
Most small town series offer up kind of quirky, fictional wonderlands that you might want to move
yeah.
yourself if you
Gilmore
think like
Girls.
Schitt's Creek and things like
Yeah.
that. And most
Schitt's
other
Creek,
T
really though?
drama,
Do you really want to move to Schitt's Creek?
I mean, not really, like, actually, to be honest. Maybe to get to know some of the people,
Because they're funny.
because they're funny. And most teen dramas are kind of either about like the sexy complications of
Mm.
hot teens versus unpopular teens. Think about Gossip Girl or even earlier on
The
90210.
OC, that to know, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're like the weirdos and wannabes watching these hotties, like Freaks and Geeks and Veronica
Yeah, yeah,
Mars.
yeah.
And then when it comes to TV, teen dramas before FNL, TV hadn't really done many sports teen dramas or teen dramas to this extent
Mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
I think FNL, what it accomplishes tonally is hugely impressive because Dillon, Texas feels like a real place.
It does.
Like it doesn't feel like a TV town. It feels like a real town, complete with all the stresses that would exist in a small backwoods Texas town. But it never goes so far into its realism that it becomes despairing. I think its teenagers do have sometimes sexy complications and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes complain about the hotter teens around them and things like that. But they never feel defined by their confidence or awkwardness. They're just people fumbling through life and occasionally doing the right things. And the series depiction of high school football is I felt also deeply influential on a host of other TV dramas that followed. You don't have to know a thing about football to enjoy the show. And honestly, if you do know a lot about football, you might roll your eyes at how many games are won on last second place. Um, but you do have to know that about a town where everybody cares about one tiny thing as though their lives depend on it, as
Yeah.
you mentioned. Dillon, Texas loves high school football almost as much as it loves God or America or guns. And whether you love the team or simply don't care about it, it ends up being almost um, a, a nice slice of life
Mm,
depiction of a tiny corner of America,
agree.
Um, what were the things that what were your favorite elements of Friday Night
Oh,
Lights in terms of, you already mentioned the coach played by Kyle Chandler,
it's
remarkably,
awesome.
but what are some of the other elements or story arcs that you truly loved about the show that defined it?
I mean, I honestly, okay, even though like the first few characters were interesting, like that, what's his name, the drunk guy, the drunk teenager,
I know who you mean, the guy who eventually played Gambit in X-Men
that
Origins.
guy,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
His story was quite interesting as it progressed, but my favorite was the introduction of Michael B. Jordan's character, Vince Howard.
Yeah, season 3 or 4, right? He came in
Three,
quite late
yeah,
into the show.
yeah, three.
Yeah. This was, I think, his second big role ever after The Wire.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's a few years removed, 2 years removed after The Wire, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came out, I was like, damn, I remember you from The Wire.
Yes, yeah. It's amazing that we watched Michael B. Jordan when he was so
So
young, before he
young,
became like this mega star in Hollywood,
correct. And
Yeah.
and he was so good in that role. Like he was that. I want to say what's that word? Um, quintessential um black kid that comes from like like the projects or whatever like
Mm-hmm.
always in trouble with the law, has a mom who's a drug addict,
Mm.
who's abandoned basically, and only football and the coach is his refuge lah. Where the
Yes.
coach even like help him hide a gun, if I remember correctly.
Correct. Yeah.
That kind of thing like where the coach gains his ultimate trust and all that stuff, and then you build this relationship between the two of them lah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so his introduction I thought was one of the cool stories lah. I mean,
Yes.
I liked also like the rest of the characters like kind of slowly. I mean, those who started in season one, eventually graduated and went on, moved on their lives, and their drama was also quite interesting, also lah.
Yeah. Your Matt
Matt
Saracens, Tim
Saracen,
Riggins. Tim Riggins is the
Tim
name that we were
Riggins,
going
that's the
for.
guy.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
Matt
Yep.
Saracen's story was cool. Landry's story was cool. Landry, this loser that suddenly became a kicker for the team. That kind of thing.
Yeah, Jesse Plemons' first big breakout role,
Exactly
actually. Now,
before.
now that he's become such a great character actor in
Yes,
Breaking Bad and so many other things.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. So many things to love
so
about the show.
many.
But
Yeah,
I mean, one of the things that I wanted to point out,
sure.
because I kind of framed this as a sports show and a teen show,
Yeah.
but it's also one of the best TV portrayals of the ins and outs of a long and successful marriage. One of the
Mm,
things that gets overlooked in the show because of the sports element and the teens element is Eric and Tammy Taylor, Kyle Chandler and Connie Britton,
yeah.
who are so pitch perfect as two people who love each other dearly and sometimes best express that by bickering affectionately with one another. I think the secret sauce that makes FNL work is that it's sneakily a family drama where the Taylors are a mother and father to a whole host of teens beyond their daughter.
Mm,
All the people that cross lives with them. I mean, I think not many teen shows pay this much attention to the adults, right? To the
yeah,
parents in
yeah,
the
yeah.
show. But Coach Taylor and Tammy Taylor feel as well defined as any of the kids or as any of the sports elements. This kind of bleeds into a topic that we're going to talk about later, lah, but I think Coach Taylor was the original Ted Lasso.
Oh,
The the the, the
yeah, 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 kinda. Yeah,
the feel good inspiring coach lah,
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
like inspires you despite their troubles in life to
Sure,
have a
sure.
good outlook, but he's not as naive as Ted Lasso though.
Yeah,
He's a more grounded approach to that.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, okay, so we've talked about some of the good things about Friday Night Lights, and if you haven't seen Friday Night Lights, it's available on Netflix. Go watch all 76 episodes. We'll watch the movie too. I mean, all of it is really good, but I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's a perfect show.
Ah,
One of the things that probably drags the show down a hair it's probably its disastrous second season, whereby there's so many terrible storylines that happen, which were quickly fixed.
To be
But
fair, that was the writer's strike season, right?
sure, yeah. But at the same time, even before the writer's strike and everything, they already decided to make Landry a murderer somehow in the season 2 premiere.
Yeah, they did.
Uh, Landry killed a guy, and then after the writer's strike was over, they just decided to forget about it. It's like,
They
it never
they
happened.
just like let him go. Like there was no murder charge in the end.
No murder charge. They never followed up on the story. They just pretended
It
that
didn't
it never
happen.
happened. Yeah. But for all of you, up to the end, I was like, God, are they ever gonna bring this back? Like Landry killed a dude.
Yeah. Landry killed the dude for Tyra, right? The that
for
what's her name? The
for Tara,
yeah.
yeah. His on and off again love interest, or triangle with Tim Riggins,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was wild, man. But it was one of those. It was probably the defining aspect of what didn't work in Friday Night Lights. Sometimes, especially in season 2, they went for storylines that just felt very trashy, very CWE. You know what I mean?
It is, yeah. I mean, it was that season felt like it was gonna fall into the
Sophomore slump,
OC,
lah. Yeah,
that kind of like a weird teen TV show lah, where the
yeah.
drama must be like heightened to crazy heights.
To life and death, murder,
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. And it was bizarre. And I think this is a good part of Friday Night Lights. The reason it felt so jarring was that it felt out of place in the show. Because if that happened on Riverdale, for example, that would be like the least interesting thing in Riverdale. They're like, yeah, sure,
Could
he murdered the
happen.
guy.
Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
It happened, there have been demon possessions and stuff like that. I mean, whatever lah.
Mm.
It's just a murder. But
Yeah,
in Friday Night Lights, it felt astonishingly bad
yeah,
lah.
it did.
Yeah. I also think like the series finale is one of the best in TV history, and
Oh
one of the few
wow.
where I don't mind an ending that leaves no room for ambiguity. I think Kyle Chandler and Jason Katims, who ran the show, kind of won Emmys for their work on that final season.
Yeah.
And those awards were richly deserved. Although I do feel like they should have won it back all the way back in season 1.
Hmm.
What are the other things about Friday Night Lights that you think makes it so special? Like the intangibles of it.
I mean, what's special is just the fact that you fall in love with all the characters. Like you just want
Yeah.
these guys to win it all in the end. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they constantly chased after the title ma in the
Yep.
first. I mean, all the seasons are basically lah
Mm-hmm.
until the final. When the whole like okay, to be fair, I've watched the show so long ago, but
Sure.
if I remember correctly, it was like the both teams like joined together into a super team like that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And then I think they won state lah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did quite enjoy the rivalry between West and East Dillon, lah. The toilet bowl, as they called it,
Mm-hmm.
like the winner between the two. And I also think it's kind of fitting that a show focusing on a small community's obsession with a team,
Mm-hmm.
in which everyone lives and breathes on the support of said community, has a small but fiercely loyal fan base itself outside the show, who benefited from the content of the show and
Yeah.
in turn spoke out for it and helped it survive in times of
Yeah,
adversity.
because
A lot of
one
you,
of the things about Friday Night Lights is that its ratings were really horrible.
it was really, really horrible. It was cancelled once
Yeah,
after season 2, and then because of fan support and fan outpour, all those petitions and all
yeah.
that, it brought the show back.
Pre-Twitter, huh?
Um, Twitter was already there, lah, but Twitter wasn't the force that it
Yeah.
was. It is today, lah. So yeah, that's one of the intangibles of the show that I really wanted to point out. The fan base outside of it, very small, very dedicated, very loyal.
Mhm.
I have sadly been in a lot of these, like, back in the day on the message board supporting very unpopular shows, trying to bring them back to life.
Mhm.
I was one of those Veronica Mars people. I was one of those Firefly people, and amazingly, like all three shows that I signed to put it worked. We brought them back. It happened, man.
To an extent, lah. I mean, like for Firefly, it would be Serenity that came out, right?
Yeah, Veronica Mars got two other seasons that
Mm-hmm.
came out of it, and Friday Night Lights got 3 other seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And the best of all the 3 were Friday Night Lights, because the 3 seasons that came
Well,
back after
awesome.
season 2 were the best. I think the best 3 seasons of
Yeah,
Friday Night Lights.
agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Um, Fantastic. Even whether you love American football or you hate American football, you don't care about
it's not
American
about
football.
that. Yeah.
It's not about that. It's a TV show that has a strong focus on the working class
Mm-hmm.
and a strong focus on being inspirational without being aspirational.
Mm.
And it shows the benefits of team sports, and it's hard not to want to experience the highs as they're depicted in the excellently staged football scenes, and it's always balanced out with the pressures piled on the young athletes in different facets of their life. Like not always murder, sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
girls
Mm-hmm.
and etc. And I've never been a fan of American football. But how would you grade how realistic its games are?
Okay, this is interesting actually.
Okay.
Um, One thing that Hollywood has an issue with, right,
Yep.
is for some reason they cannot find people to throw the football really well.
Well, it's a skill.
Yeah, yeah, no, but like
Yeah.
you, for some, just the mechanics of it is enough, you see. But even the
Mm.
mechanics are sometimes wrong, and sometimes it just looks so weird. Friday Night Light kind of dodged that by, I mean, the players aren't too bad. Like they make the least mistakes in the throwing motion than most other shows.
Yep.
Like in terms of like football realism, lah. Um,
Interesting.
the
Okay.
play calling itself is actually quite. It makes sense. It's very basic high school play calling. A lot of running of the ball, not as much throwing. Even though the throwing is, they try to throw as, uh, I mean, it throws a lot lesser than in the professional NFL, lah.
Yep.
But it's the throws that obviously will wow you, lah. And when the throws happen, um, you know, they go for really long, like 63-yarder, like in the first episode.
Yep. Yep.
That's like a Hail Mary, what they call a Hail Mary throw, lah. Yeah,
Yes.
where you don't know where the ball's going to end up, but you hope it ends up somewhere where it's going to get a touchdown, that kind of
Mm-hmm,
thing. So
mm-hmm.
that's kind of realistic also. So all in all, I would say like the realism of Friday Night Lights is like a 7 out of 10 in terms of the
Right.
sports,
Okay.
the football element, lah.
I feel like 7 out of 10 is quite high for Hollywood sports realism.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm saying that they are doing it. They do
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
than most. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely, and we'll kind of talk about this when we get to boxing movies. Also,
Oh
like the
my god.
realism of it.
Yeah.
I mean, like Creed made Michael B. Jordan again made the worst decision of his life to hire Rocky as a coach. I mean, because like we're kind of I'm particularly immersed in combat sports and
Yeah.
all that, so I
Same.
know what is realism for that, lah.
Yeah, same. Especially boxing for me, right? We both are huge
Right.
boxing fans.
Yeah, especially for that, lah. Yeah, lah. But the thing is, I didn't know anything about American football, so I had no detailed knowledge, lah.
Mm.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is by no means essential for
Nah,
viewing. I
it's
mean,
not.
I've, I think the show will kind of walk you through the different kinds of offensive and
Yeah.
defensive schemes,
Yeah.
but I think not knowing the difference between a fourth down or a touchdown won't really hurt your enjoyment.
No.
And as with the film and the series, the football scenes, as you mentioned, are some of the best committed to film,
Mm.
in Hollywood, especially.
Mm.
And it's incredibly immersive. They showcase the beauty and brutality of the sport while making the stakes feel incredibly real because a lot of
Mm.
these kids are so invested in it, and the town is so invested in it.
Yeah.
In their particular little bubble universe, this matters a lot. So that matters a lot as well.
Agreed.
Add to that the thematic elements, disability, teen pregnancy,
Mm-hmm.
relationships,
The usual teen
infidelity,
drama stuff also.
the dysfunctional families and the occupational pressures, the small town politics, school funding difficulties. I really like that aspect into the booster culture, people who fund the
Yeah.
teams and all of that. The use of PEDs is in there as well, and it creates a nice mix for the cast of characters and a gold mine for drama.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate a lot of that, but as I've touched on earlier, I think what makes the show really, really special is the people and the characters feel so richly defined.
Agreed.
And for a sports show, I think you can't get any higher than Friday Night Lights. Any final thoughts before we move on to our next topic?
Friday Night Lights, man, it goes down as one of the best sports TV shows ever.
Man, I'll go as far as to say as best TV shows of any genre ever.
Oh wow, okay.
Like it will rank up there. I wouldn't say it's like a top 10 all timer or anything. It's not like The Wire or
Exactly.
Breaking
I was
Bad
going to say The
level.
Wire, the Breaking Bad, and the same. What Better Call Saul and all that.
But like for a top
100
20, top 50 overall all time. I mean, that's quite high lah for all time.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many
considering
TV shows.
all genres. Yeah, I would go as far as to say that it's one of the better ones out there. One of the best. Because of its season 2, I probably wouldn't rank it as high as the other perfect shows. Like
Yeah.
your
But it finished
Sauls
strong.
and Breaking Bad. But it finished really, really strong, and 4 of the 5 seasons were outstanding.
Yeah,
Let's just
4
say
out of
that.
5. Yeah.
I wouldn't blame you if like you chose to skip season 2. I wouldn't mind it.
You can actually skip season 2.
Yeah. Or if you don't, when you watch Landry kill someone, like just think to yourself, like
Fever dream.
it's okay. It's a fever dream. They won't bring it back up. It's almost like an OVA in animated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move on to from one inspiring coach to another. A show called Ted Lasso on Apple TV Plus. When we first
Oh,
got into Ted Lasso, back in the early pandemic era,
yeah.
right? It was a very underrated, underseen TV show on Apple TV Plus, which
Mm-hmm.
was a fledgling network or fledgling streaming service at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, Ted Lasso has blown up to be one of the biggest shows on streaming TV. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Lasso is one of the most talked about shows on the level of a what's a talked about show in modern times? Euphoria,
Mm-hmm.
Attack on Titan is like on that level of
It is on that
discourse,
level. Yeah.
which is bizarre. I would never have assumed the sitcom based on a commercial
By NBC.
from by NBC Sports about an American football coach going over to England to coach a soccer team would get over this much in the
Uh-huh.
mainstream public eye. Especially because its tone is very intentionally cheesy and corny and feel good. It is the type of sitcom that will feel at home back in the 70s or 80s, or 90s even, because these days sitcoms are kind of a blend of pathos and depression alongside the humor and all of that.
Yeah.
There's more
Yeah.
drama these days than sitcoms, but this is a straight throwback sitcom to back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Watching Ted Lasso from the beginning until now and seeing it rise in popularity, what do you think captured the imaginations of people? Why was it such a big show?
Simply put, is the innocence of it all,
Yep,
the
yep, yep,
niceness
yep.
of it, the way that the show really, I mean, on the surface level, where there's this just inherent niceness about everything that's going on in this football club.
Mm, yep.
At the end of the day, there may be nastiness around it and all that stuff, like nastiness around the world and all that. But then there was
Mm-hmm,
this source of comfort that Ted Lasso, the character, provided to his players and all that, lah. Even when
mm-hmm,
the player's a piece of shit, like he provided that sincerity of wanting to help this player become a better player, not maybe
mm-hmm.
through the athletic pursuit of football, right?
Yep.
But more like in the character building, in the morality building kind of way, lah. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that sort of like went. I mean, it was just so weird because he has that southern accent. He's in
Mm-hmm.
England. He's that fish out of water kind of thing going on.
Yep.
But his sincerity to do his best and to be nice about it throughout, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just resonated with a lot of people. Lah. I think episode 3 kind of like sums it up, when he was with that journalist, and then the journalist was trying to like figure him out, and then the journalist in the end realized that, oh my god, he's just nice. He's
Mm-hmm.
just a nice guy who is doing his best.
Yep.
Yeah. And I feel that is something that resonates with a lot of people, because a lot of people are just that, where they're just nice people doing their best.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I particularly feel that when Ted Lasso came out in 2020, right? The world was, I mean, the world has always been a shitty place, lah. But in particular, that year was a shitty year. I mean, we were in the midst of the beginnings of a pandemic, right? Do you remember?
Yeah.
We were in the midst of a really heated American election between Trump and Biden. I think the world felt as divided
Mm.
and people felt as nasty as the world has ever felt.
Yeah.
I think the world just felt like a cesspool of hatred and
Yeah, left or right,
division.
or whatever political
Uh,
spectrum or ideological spectrum you're on, it just felt nasty.
I mean, vaxxers, anti-vaxxers, and stuff like that. Like everyone, just nobody could agree on anything
Anything, yeah.
except that they all love Ted Lasso as a person.
That also brought us together.
Ted Lasso, the human Paddington,
Yeah,
brought us together, and for a show kind of based on a one joke premise from an NBC commercial
there
7
was no
years
way this
ago.
show was supposed to work.
This is a show about a soccer neophyte hired to coach AFC Richmond in the UK.
Mm.
It had no right to be this amusing or thoughtful. And in the end, it was a sports sitcom that's not really sports at all. It's about a person trying to do their
Yeah.
best. Like that Lasso arrived in London armed with this, as you mentioned, this folksy twang,
Hmm.
and he is very self-aware. He understands that everyone thinks he's completely unqualified to coach Richmond,
Hmm.
and he's Right. I mean, his first press conference, he said, "You could fill two internets with what I don't know about football." He tells the incredulous British press, right? But I think for Lasso, coaching isn't about
Nah,
understanding the offside rule, which he still doesn't
he
understand
doesn't
going
get
into
it.
season 3, or or being able to name other Premier League footballers he can't, or even not understanding that Sheffield Wednesday is not the day. Um, but he's kind of like he wants to be or help his players be the best versions of themselves,
Mhm.
not just on the field but off the field
Yeah,
too.
which
He cares
is
about them as
so
people.
weird
Yeah.
for on a professional football level. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. This is like if
Yeah.
you were a high school coach, like Coach Taylor, right?
Mm.
It makes sense, you right? Because the boys are young and all that. Football should be also there to teach you how to be better men outside the field.
Yeah, that's the more important point of team sports. It's not just about winning, like, which
Yeah.
is of course important also. And one of my favorite scenes in Ted Lasso was his right hand man,
The
what's his
Coach
name,
Beard.
Beard, Coach Beard, like dressing him down at the season 1 finale, saying that you think winning is important, but this is a professional team.
Yeah,
Their livelihoods, the food on the table depends on winning. How can you take that lightly? And I,
exactly.
I love I love that, like, kind of reality check that sometimes hits Ted Lasso's
Because his
optimism
naivety,
also.
like he's just so naive about it. Not naive, but rather he's so adamant that his way, like
It's
that.
the right way,
Yeah,
lah.
and the winning doesn't matter. Is what happens. How we grow as people. But then you realize that you need to win or you're gonna fuck up. You know?
Absolutely, which ends with them being relegated and
Yeah.
everything at the end of season 1. So I like the tonal balance of it. Like, it isn't a one-way show. It's like, oh, Ted Lasso's always right. Optimism, the power of friendship, the power of niceness will win games. It doesn't. Sometimes you could lose your job, and
Yeah.
sometimes you could get relegated from the league, and people lose money and lose sponsors and stuff like that. Like, it finds a balance in that.
It does. Yeah.
And I think, like, a lot like Friday Night Lights, I think the football matches in Ted Lasso are used primarily to enhance the interpersonal dynamics of the characters off the field.
Yeah.
Richmond is a team in disarray, and its most famous players like the cocky pretty boy Jamie Tart,
Oh.
or the aging, angry Roy
Roy
Kent.
Ken. Troy Ken.
Ro- Roy Kent, who is obviously, like,
Roy Keane.
a Roy Keane slash all the other, like, no nonsense central midfielders that you see in
Yeah.
every team, like, you know what I mean.
Uh,
I like their dynamic going from openly loathing each other to liking each other,
mhm.
and then faced with
Respecting
these
each
two
other. Lah.
respecting each other, and
Yeah.
then Coach Lasso is kind of faced with these two different facets of masculinity. And he's great. He's such a different coach. He loves Broadway musicals, refers to God as a she. And he puts a suggestion box in the locker room.
Mhm.
And then he has an insecure soccer. Uh, he's not a coach at first. What was he, a ball boy?
Yeah, he was a
Nate,
pitch. He was a
Kidman,
kidman.
Nate.
Yeah, yeah,
Played by Nick Mohammed, who is kind of stealthily hilarious also.
yeah. But like
Um,
Kidman had like a football genius mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. He knows the sport, in a way that Ted Lasso doesn't, strategically, tactically, and technically. Lah.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Lasso is more of inspiration. He's more of a, just do it, lah, really. But I think what I really liked, and the difference between the commercial and the show, was that in trying to flesh out the commercial into a show, Jason Sudeikis and Bill Lawrence made a few very smart decisions. I think they went really easy on the fish out of water concept that was in the
Yeah,
commercial.
they didn't push so hard for
Uh,
that.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
They
there's
still had
some
some
jokes.
jokes, but the jokes were very peppered around instead of being the central reason
Yeah,
of his funniness. You know?
yeah, exactly. So it didn't go into that kind of cliche that I expected it to be. Also,
Yeah, exactly.
and in the commercial, Ted Lasso was less self-aware. He was more of
Asshole.
David Brent. He was more of a David Brent, right, from The
Yeah,
Office.
yeah.
So they totally flipped up his character to make him more likable, make him nicer and everything. And I think they made all the right decisions to make the show successful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's get into its very controversial second season. Why do you think season 2 was such a hot rod for controversy?
You tell me first. I also want to know this.
I think season 2 leaned away from the niceness of Ted Lasso and dealt with the implications of bottling up or repressing negative emotions.
Yeah, but I thought
Ted
that was a
Lasso,
brilliant move by them.
absolutely. Like, I'm just saying that, like in trying to do that, they've tapped into the darkness of Ted Lasso and the darkness of other characters, like Nate, for example,
Mm.
especially. To show you that, yeah, there is a flip side to the coin. There's the other side of the coin of being so relentlessly optimistic at
And
the
toxic
time.
niceness.
toxic niceness. It
Yeah.
deals with the psychology of that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of lesser shows wouldn't have delved into that, I think.
Yeah.
And in trying to do that, it made the show darker and less comfortable and not comfort food anymore, which is why it became so controversial and
Yeah.
people didn't like it as much. On the on the other hand, though, I think me and you share the same opinion that season two
Was a lot better than season one
was
because
a
of
lot
that.
better in season one because it addressed the hard truths of
Yeah.
Ted Lasso's toxic niceness.
It evolved the
As
show to what it should be lah, about realism lah, about you can't be all this nice, you there's a limit to how nice you can be
mm-hmm,
without
mm-hmm.
repercussions lah. Because you're being taken advantage of left, right, and center. That's something that Ted Lasso faced,
Yep.
from his players and all that, by them being rude to him and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But also because he was bottling up something really pertinent lah, his divorce lah, not addressing it lah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
He was just trying to be like this happy-go-lucky guy all the time, and it sent him into a tailspin and
Yeah,
to panic attacks and things like that.
yeah.
And I also really like how season two dealt with the mental health of athletes.
Agreed. Yeah.
In a very fortuitous bit of timing, right? That episode about Ted Lasso having an anxiety attack and him being criticized for going off the
Was
field.
Naomi
Uh,
Osaka, right?
Naomi Ahsoka and Simone Biles. It
In
happened
the
in
Olympics.
that time
Yeah.
period, right? Yeah. So it was. I mean, obviously, Ted Lasso couldn't have foreseen that happening. Like this was filmed like
A
a
year
year
before.
before, you know.
Yeah.
But they knew that something like that could happen in the world of
It
sports,
did.
the high pressure situations, and fans and critics and media are not forgiving of athletes as though they're not people, as though
Yeah.
they don't have the same fragilities that we all do. We think of them as superhuman, but they're not.
I mean, they're
And
superhuman physically,
sure,
but
yeah,
that doesn't mean that emotionally they are also as rock solid, or
mm-hmm,
they're not
mm-hmm.
going through their own demons and all that. And how many athletes have you seen over the years? Like, not only, I mean, all sports throughout American football itself, what, tennis, you have how many people in, I mean, watch King Richard, right?
Yeah. The one that Will Smith undeservedly won an Oscar for, but sure.
I mean, but there was the whole point about like this tennis parents and all that, and you saw like the breakdown of
Mm.
these little girls playing tennis, where they're like throwing their rackets around, being angry at nothing, at a nothing
Mm.
game, and that was something that the person Richard Williams kind of foresaw and didn't want his daughters to go through,
Definitely, and how many athletes you see today after their careers have ended have devolved into alcoholism or substance
a lot.
abuse or sometimes suicide. It happens. It's shockingly common, which is why
It is.
I like that Lasso address this, because it's an
Agreed.
important part of
Exactly.
the show.
I
Yeah,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that was our review for Ted Lasso.
One of
We
the
really,
best.
really like the show, and I can't wait for season 3 to come. It is one of Apple TV's standout stars.
Mhm.
Apple TV has a lot of better shows. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Severance is great on Apple TV. Pachinko is really good. For All Mankind is really great. But Ted Lasso is by far their biggest hit,
For good reason.
and for good reason, it absolutely deserves that. Next up, going from a very big hit in the streaming world to a show that till today, despite its critical acclaim, remains, I think, very underseen, very underwatched, very underappreciated.
Yeah. Nobody gives
Um,
a shit about this show.
Nobody has seen the show. If there's any show less important, or if there's any sport less important to the rest of the world, I'm not talking about America. If there's any sport less important to the rest of the world than American football, it
Uh-huh.
is baseball. And that's what Brockmire is about. We will be talking about IFC's show Brockmire. Brockmire follows Hank Azaria, who
Mhm.
plays Jim Brockmire, who is a famous Major League Baseball announcer who suffers an embarrassing public meltdown on the air after discovering his
Wife
wife's
cheated on him.
infidelity.
Mhm.
A decade later, after his embarrassment, after his
He
shame,
comes back.
he tries to reclaim his career
Mhm.
and love life in a small town,
Mhm.
calling minor league ball
Mhm.
for Morristown, Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
a team hilariously called the Fracas.
I love it.
And then it follows his journey from down in the depths, being an alcoholic, up to becoming a more well-rounded person.
Just remember
Um,
the entire premise that Hidze has just said, okay? This is the
yep,
premise of season 1. It's about
yeah,
a
that's only season
rundown,
one.
this guy who is coming back, trying to rebuild his career, trying to rebuild his life in a
Yep,
small town, the very usual American TV story, lah,
yep.
Ah,
but it's told in a way that is very different from Ted Lasso
It's very different. Yeah, 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 yeah.
or Friday Night Lights. I think it is one of the most acidic, scathing
Mm-hmm.
black comedies out there in terms of its writing and wit.
Hell yeah.
Very few shows have the kind of acerbic quality that Brockmire has.
Yeah.
And a lot like Ted Lasso, weirdly enough, Brockmire is actually based on an online sketch comedy, an online sketch from Funny or Die.
Yeah.
And it was a character developed by Hank Azaria, and then they decided to turn it into a show.
Yep.
And just like that Lasso, like there's no reason this one joke comedy sketch should have been this good
Nope.
over 4 seasons.
Nope.
Evolving into a 4th season that jumps far ahead in the future into a technological dystopia. So it starts from like this realistic, almost character study of an alcoholic baseball announcer trying to get his life together,
Uh-huh.
into this weird look at what America will and can be in the future.
Like
And really realistic,
like
really realistic too.
post-apocalyptic America, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
What? Like America is now like this. By the time it goes to season 4, like what the fuck just happened? Like America is in this disaster, right? Where like half of it is in dispute. It's called the
Yep.
disputed lands, you know.
Yeah,
Arizona is on fire. The Amazon is gone. Like
Mhm.
it was such an insane thing. And then there was this great AI called Lyman,
Yep. Lemon. Yeah.
where it is trying to save America,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it's also that terrifying Skynet kind of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how does that
What?
show go into season 4? You know, it's a
Exactly.
wild trajectory for a show. You know,
Yeah.
and before we delve into the trajectory, I just have to say that I think Hank Azaria as a live action actor
Mm.
is a bit underrated because he's best known for his
Yes.
voice work. Right,
Yes.
he's done
Yes.
over
Yes.
300 Simpsons characters in his repertoire.
Yes. Agreed.
So many. He has done, Mo and Chief Wiggum,
Apu.
and people like Apu,
Until he
most
was retired,
famously.
lah.
Yeah, he retired it himself. He's the one who called
Yeah.
Apu out.
But interestingly, like a lot of Indian comics also. Okay, never mind. That's another episode, another discussion another day.
Yeah. This isn't the Apu show.
Yeah.
It's Hank Azaria's
Hank
other show,
Azaria.
Brockmire.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful IFC comedy. And in fact, I think of all the comedies that we're addressing today, including Sports Night, this is the pure pound for pound, line for line, funniest
Yes.
comedy.
100%.
Not just in terms of sports comedies, but in terms of comedies in general.
Yeah.
And Azaria finally gets to blend his two skills, live action acting and voice acting, and gets to blend the two halves of his career like never before. So Azaria builds this character of a disgraced former baseball play-by-play guy
Mhm.
whose career falls apart, and then he describes on this telecast in very frank terms.
Mhm.
The sack he caught his wife performing with another man,
Mhm.
and half of what's remarkable about the show is simply hearing Azaria discuss extreme things
Yeah.
like sex and booze and drug abuse with kind of the same like acerbic, very like old school, old timey announcer accent
Yeah.
that Brockmire will use to remind his listeners about, like, say, the infield fly rule or something.
Yeah.
Brockmire is so great with his voice and he's so great with his facial acting, but the other half of what makes Brockmire equally special and raunchy and depraved, but it's also because he's tender and even surprisingly romantic.
Mhm.
Imagine if Catastrophe took place in a minor league ballpark. That's what seasons 1 to 2 kind of feels like.
Mhm.
That's how Azaria and the show's creator, Joe Church Cooper, are able to find the vulnerable human being underneath the accent, underneath the acerbic tongue, and his familiar plate blazer. Even as Brockmire never quite breaks character or stops talking like he's doing play by play, even in regular life.
Mhm.
I think you went following Brockmire like when it was still airing, right? You only
I
caught up
watched it in
with it.
2000 during the pandemic. So just after it finished.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Brockmire? I sort of been like waxing lyrical for a while because I love Brockmire.
No,
It's my
I
favorite of
know.
the
I
four
mean,
shows.
I watched it
Yeah.
because of you. You were the one that kept saying
Yeah.
watch Brockmire like over the past few years. So then when 2020 came about and really we had nothing much to do in our lives, right?
Yep, we caught up on Brockmire.
Exactly.
So what do you think about Brockmire from season 1 to 4?
Okay, so season 1 is that usual guy trying to redeem himself, trying to get back his mojo lah, right?
Yep.
And it was brilliantly done. Like you felt you just felt his wit whenever like because the situations are presented to him in a way that there's no choice, but he's going to say something witty about it,
Yeah.
and he does
Yeah.
it so well all the time, and the
Hmm.
absurdity of like baseball owners, the absurdity of the new media, that kind of thing. He had everything he had a comment about everything, and he does
That's
a
right.
play by play because he is uh
Play by play
yeah,
man.
he's an
Yeah.
announcer. So
Yeah.
that happens all the time, and then you have characters who riff very well off him. Like Charles is one of my favorite characters
Yep.
to for Brockmire to kind of spar with, because they're
Hmm.
very different from one another.
I think Amanda Pete as his love interest Jules is
Another
also a very
one,
interesting
yes, I was
character.
just going to
Yeah.
say it, Amanda Pete as his love interest, and I mean all throughout the entire 4 seasons, brilliantly done also.
J.K. Simmons has a nice little role in there as well
Yes, he does.
as a really good foil to Brockmire.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So one thing about Brockmire is his ability to just riff with his co-stars lah, which I really enjoy,
Yeah.
and really well done. Um,
Yeah.
One of the other things about, I mean, and then as slowly he gets back to the big time, right? Like in season one, I think it was him getting to, by the end he was going to major leagues back again. Right? Remember correctly?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and then slowly again the ridiculousness of baseball. Like this show
Yeah.
is not really. I mean, it is a homage to baseball,
Yeah.
but also at the ridiculousness of why this sport is still around.
It's a celebration and a criticism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, yeah, because
Yeah. Yeah.
the character loves baseball. Like
Yeah.
Brockmire, the character loves baseball, but he realizes how ridiculous everything is around baseball.
Baseball, just like Brockmire, is sort of like this
Out of
representation
date.
of an archaic, obsolete American institution that is failing but still surviving.
Yeah,
Uh, like most American institutions,
yeah, it's barely hanging on.
Yeah, it's a nice commentary on that. That's I think the smartest thing about Brockmire.
Yeah, I agree. And that's
Yeah.
something that goes on throughout until season 4, when this techno totalitarian society is about to be born, right? And they
Hmm.
want to use baseball as a way to produce more nationalism,
Yep.
that kind of thing. So like, what the fuck? Like, it's from season 1 to season 4, the shift
Hmm.
was so awesome. And when the final season is my favorite because of it, like, because of such a weird shift. Yet at
Yeah.
the heart of it, it still remains the same. Brockmire still remains that guy
Yeah.
that kind of like, yep, this is all fucked up as usual.
Yeah.
Nothing new
Yeah.
here. Yes, it might be a AI that's buying over baseball, but really, it's not that crazy.
I mean, all the previous owners felt like robots anyway. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he hates the owner so much.
Yeah, I think as do most people who running sports teams do,
Yeah.
interference from the owners,
Yeah.
and I think to the end, despite all the wild plot machinations that happen, I think it still retains genuine humor in its lines and the acerbic delivery of Hanger's area, plus a genuine level of pathos because he
Mm.
continually tries to rehabilitate himself.
Yeah.
But Maya is never fixed. Like he's never like, oh, one season I have an epiphany and now I'm a correct person and now I'm like a well-rounded person. He's never
Yeah.
quite reaches there because none of us ever quite reach there. We're always
Yeah.
working on ourselves, and Brockmire is working on himself right to the end.
Yeah.
Even when he has a daughter, even though his relationship with Jules doesn't work out and things like that.
Yeah.
It's a terrific show from beginning to end, and I highly recommend you go download Brockmire today because it's legit
It's
my
legit.
favorite of the 4 shows. Yeah,
Yeah,
legit.
it's
I mean,
legit.
anything that like we forgot to mention that you want to cap off Brockmire with before we move on to sports
I
night?
just watch it because it's so insane. Like, it's such an insane show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, it's so underrated. Like, there's never been a show this underrated.
Oh, Catastrophe,
Yeah.
which no one I know has seen either.
Yeah. The only reason I've seen it is because Hidze recommended it to me.
I know
Yeah.
this is like the worst part of being like covering TV is just like I find so many gems that nobody sees, and it's so difficult to sell people on things, especially if they're not popular.
Yeah.
Like if I recommend Euphoria, for example, right? Everybody is will tend to take my recommendation because they have like confirmation bias around them. Twitter, Facebook, or whatever, or
Sure.
Instagram is going nuts with Euphoria. So they're like, oh, maybe Hitzel is right. But if I say like, oh, go watch Brockmire or go watch
Yeah, there's no
Catastrophe,
news on it at all.
and people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Nobody's even talking about this, you know.
Exactly.
And part of the reason some people get into shows late is also a sense of FOMO, right? You know, you want to be in on the cultural
Yeah.
conversation.
This is not. This is not.
This is not lah, but just do yourselves a favor. Brockmire is worth your
It
time,
is.
even if you don't. Even if we are the only two people you get to talk about it with. Feel free to DM me, man. I will gladly talk Brockmire with you.
Yeah.
Our final topic of the night will be talking about Aaron Sorkin's
Mm.
Sports Night. Um, Forget the newsroom. This is, I feel, Aaron Sorkin's second best show next to The
After
West
the
Wing.
West Wing, yeah,
Yeah, of course, of course. And some people might even consider Sports Night better than The West Wing.
because they had
But
bad seasons.
it didn't have bad seasons exactly, and you know Aaron Sorkin ran it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And this is the thing to keep in mind about the version of Aaron Sorkin that created the 2-season ABC Dramedy Sports Night. He was not a name at that point. He was not a superstar screenwriter. Yes, he was a respected playwright, and he had done a few breakthrough movies like A Few Good Men, for
Yeah, Few
example.
Good Men and
But A Few Good
American
Men is not
President.
American President. But A Few Good Men is not known as an Aaron Sorkin movie. It's known
No,
as a Rob Reiner movie or
Rob
Tom
Reiner,
Cruise
because
movie.
director.
Yeah, yeah. Like he's not at a point where like, oh, you know, now everything Aaron Sorkin does is an Aaron Sorkin movie,
Mm,
regardless of who's in it. But at that
mm.
point, he was not. You know, he was an outright newcomer to television. This was his first TV show also, and he did something totally understandable with Sports Night. He filled it to the brim with ideas, perhaps more than it needed for a show
Yeah,
about a sports talk show.
yeah.
Perhaps because he didn't know how many seasons or how many episodes he would get.
Not many.
But
He was right.
not many. Yeah, you know, and it's taken because of that. It's taken on an interesting position within his body of work. It's something of a patient zero for the Aaron Sorkin world.
Mm-hmm.
The show concerns the behind-the-scenes workings of a Sports Center style cable sports news show,
Mm-hmm.
anchored by cocky buddies Casey McCall, who's played by Peter Krause, and Dan Riddell, played by Josh Charles, and produced by the kind of brilliant but flighty Dana Whittaker, played by Felicity Huffman, before she was big also. There are a lot of other great characters in there as well, and the themes and threads of the show reappear in the films, plays, and shows that Sorkin will write about in the 2 decades that follows.
Mm.
You know, so much of the topics that he's interested in, the politics that he's interested in, found its way into Sports Night before it found its way into the newsroom. For example, talking about journalism and things like that, or talking about politics in the West Wing.
Yeah,
All these topics were in this sports show,
yeah.
and I have no idea how he managed to so organically weave in those
In
topics
45 episodes.
in 45 episodes in a show about the sports talk show.
Mm-hmm.
But Aaron Sorkin did, and thus it's very highly subjective. But I feel that this is one of Aaron Sorkin's the purest Aaron Sorkin show there was, because this was when he poured all his ideas into 45 episodes, and without knowing that he would have a TV career or movie career after this. This was just pure Aaron Sorkin, and for good or for bad, this is one of his best shows. Would you agree that it's better than the newsroom in terms of, like, you know, a show
What?
within a show,
Hell yeah.
or Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip?
Oh
for
my
example?
god. Okay, what are the problems with both of those shows? What's the number one issue?
The actual show that they were making, like, as in like the fictional creators
Yes.
within the TV show were making a terrible product.
Correct.
Studio 60 was making
Was
a
bad.
terrible sketch show.
Exactly. The sketch show was ridiculously stupid.
The newsroom is the kind of high-handed liberal scolding
Oh,
that made Don't Look Up so unpopular.
exactly.
You know, and Sports Night, on the flip side though, it actually feels quite even-handed. Like,
Yeah.
there is a lot of monologuing and walk and talking, and, you know, but in political discourse. But I think Aaron Sorkin feels a bit more less angry and more
Mm-hmm.
even-handed and more willing to win hearts and minds rather than
Exactly.
scold you
Yeah.
in Sports Night. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also this, I think each episode is like half an hour only, right?
It's a sitcom, yeah. So 20 to 25
Yeah.
minutes.
So there was this like briskness about it that made it very easy to watch also.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah. And I don't know how the hell did he put in so many emotional like storylines in half an hour so many
Yeah.
times. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. And like the pressures of working in a I feel like this showed like the pressures of working in a newsroom.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, even though it's on sports, but there's this pressure about it, about breaking news at a certain time, of quickly writing up um just the rush of it all. It felt like a rush to get it
Yeah,
out onto the TV, lah. You know.
Sportsnet was interesting because it took place at the dawn of cable news.
Mm,
Because before the 90s, right, news was once a day at most, maybe twice a day.
mm,
It wasn't always as like 24 hours. So CNN kind of pioneered the 24-hour news cycle. And then forget about news media like, today with the internet and everything.
mm.
It's not a 24-hour news cycle. It's like a minute by minute news cycle.
Yeah, which is
Like
crazy.
it's crazy, but this is the dawn of it, and the pressures of transitioning from that old media to the new media is really present here, and
Mm.
I like that aspect of it, especially as someone who's kind of worked in the newsroom before, also.
Exactly. I mean, you're a journalist, so this
Mm,
is kind of your thing.
definitely. I mean, I've never covered sports, although that's always been my dream. But yeah, um, I think for all of my admiration for kind of Sorkin's um, writing style and the substance that he
Hmm.
writes, I think the way that he makes kind of very complex ideas seem clear and the frothier subjects worth of serious contemplation,
Hmm.
it's most present in The West Wing.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think it's also present here. Sports Night is, weirdly saddled with an inappropriate laugh track, but this was forced upon sitcoms at that time.
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
remember,
yeah, yeah.
like, Sports Night had a laugh track, although
Yeah.
it clearly should not have?
They and then in like the DVD, when the DVDs were released, that they kind of took it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So then, if you
yeah,
watched it in the newer versions,
mhm,
there was no laugh track.
yeah,
Thank God.
yeah. Thank God. But I think it kind of weirdly works even with
It
the laugh
does.
track.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it even adds to kind of Sports Night's period charm. Lah. This is Sorkin creating the Sorkin sound. You get to see how his walk and talks, how his particular vernacular and vocabulary has developed.
Yeah.
Everything that would crystallize in the West Wing was developed here. Lah. And everything that will come out in Studio 60 and the newsroom was developed here, but better. It's been so long since I've seen Sports Night, and for you as well. What do
Yeah.
you recall? What do you think made it so memorable even 20 plus years later?
Is it really the dynamics of the characters? The two anchors were really good.
Hmm.
Um, wow, and they went on to have really cool careers also, lah. Like one went
Yeah,
on to
yeah,
the Good
both of them.
Wife, and then one I can't remember what he does, but never mind. Anyway,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. I mean, the next show that the guy did also was 6 Feet Under on HBO, which
oh, there
was
we go.
one of
Yeah.
one
Um,
of the prestige dramas that spawned the genre.
exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things is that not only you have the two very charismatic anchors and
Mm-hmm.
their like issues, right? Because like one of them is like this clever guy, who has been who's an Ivy League guy and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also about the producers and all the background stuff, like all the producers, the associate producers, the research analysts, and how
Dealing with network executives.
dealing with
If you
network executives. Oh my god, it's so infuriating.
It feels like the truest thing in Sports Night because I feel like Aaron Sorkin himself was dealing with network executives,
Exactly. I
so
think he just wrote that
he,
in.
he gets to meta commentate on
Yeah.
that. Lah.
And he had
Yeah,
such really crisp walk and talks. Like
yeah,
I feel that their walks, I mean, West Wing also had a few memorable walk and talks, but
yeah. A few
Sports
good men,
Night,
yeah, and all that.
oh come on.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And keep in mind the period that this came out in the mid 90s. Walk and talks and this kind of wit smart dialogue
Yeah.
was not seen on TV. This was just not around. You remember, like, I mean, sitcoms like Friends were the norm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the casual audience was not used to this style in a way that, like, today we are used to it, like, because we have seen The Social Network, we've seen The West Wing,
Yeah,
and all
exactly.
of that. This is one of the heights of Aaron Sorkin for me. So if you're a fan of Aaron Sorkin, if you liked what was that courtroom drama last year, The Trial of the Chicago
Oh
Seven,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
The one with the crazy racist judge.
yeah, correct, correct. If you like shows like that, or go check out Aaron Sorkin's earliest show, Sports Night. It's very charming. It's only 45 episodes, and it is very consistent in quality in a way that his other shows are not, including The West Wing. Yeah, and that's why I feel Sports Night is very special. Yeah. Any final thoughts on Sports Night before we cap it off, man?
Man, I miss like the just the insane wittiness, the repartee and all that stuff that Sports
Hmm.
Night had between its
Hmm.
characters. I feel more TV shows need to do that.
I think TV shows nowadays are more okay with doing
They
that.
are, they are.
Also, think of like the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is
Oh, that one is
uh,
that's a good example.
Yeah, but that's by another very distinct witty writer, Amy Sherman
Yeah,
Palladino, lah, who's
from
like,
Gilmore Girls, right?
yeah, who's like the female Aaron Sorkin.
Oh my god, yours. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
more or less.
for good and for bad, they both have the
They both
same
have very similar,
tendencies.
yeah.
Yeah, and the sound and style of the dialogue is very similar as well. A lot of walk and talk.
Amy Palladino, right?
Uh, Amy Sherman Palladino,
Mm.
correct? Yeah, who did Gilmore Girls and also The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Yeah, go check out Sports Night, Brockmire, Ted Lasso, and Friday Night Lights. And that caps it off for this episode of Behold. Clear eyes, full hearts,
Can't
can't
lose.
lose. This has been Hit Zero.
I'm Hardi.
Goodbye,
Bye
guys.
bye.